I started the organization Organic Volunteers, and our website's growfood.org. We have organicvolunteers.com and all that as well. But it's just a small group of us that have put together this website. And essentially what we're doing is we're connecting people who want to work on organic farms or doing natural buildings, sustainable living, those types of things. We're connecting them up with projects where they can get hands-on experience.
I run an institute there, Occidental Arts and Ecology Center in Occidental, and it's this water institute, and it's basically about watershed advocacy, training, education, and research. And so earth, air, fire, and water are the elemental forms with which, as designers and people engaging in this work, I think you bring to putting the puzzle back together. If you ever did jigsaw puzzles, they have 4 corners. You usually find the 4 corners, and then you line out the edges. And the 4 corners is earth, air, fire, and water. And the puzzle begins there. And the work of the day is to put the puzzle of this planet back together, right? It's a regenerative opportunity.
I had a teacher long ago who used to say, white magic is poetry, black magic is anything that works. And, what's the point of magic if it doesn't work, right? I think we always think magic is something in the fantasy realm. But if you think about it, changing consciousness is pretty much the ground of everything we do. And we can't actually do anything without first shifting our consciousness to make it possible.
And the MTDs, it stands for Movimiento de Trabajadores Desocupados. So I tried to get sort of a definition from one of our friends that we're hanging out with, like, what is a desocupado? He explained it to me that the desocupados are anybody who's been kind of disenfranchised or forgotten by the capitalist system. They've been left out.
Is the planet a community or a commodity? Are you a part of this living being or a part from it? What is your engagement with this living, breathing, amazing being? Imagine it was the early 60s that we actually got a photo, those early Apollo photos, to actually see this incredible jewel that we live on and see that it literally is one world. But it isn't just, we don't want to house one world, we want to house a world of villages, right? And the building of those villages is the work of the day for everyone here.
Well, the thing about working in New Orleans is that it's been this amazing opportunity to go to a place where it all crashed down. What did work in that moment were the efforts that people made on a very grassroots level to start to organize and come together. There's particularly a group called Common Ground Relief. And right after the hurricane, they began organizing and mobilizing in Algiers, which is the neighborhood, one of the neighborhoods that didn't flood. It's a very mixed neighborhood. Part of it's very poor, very black. Part of it's starting to get gentrified. So there was a lot of tension, racial tension going on right after the hurricane. But there's also a kind of interesting mix of resources and alternative people and people with deep-seated needs and lacks. And a man named Malik Rahim, who's an old Black Panther organizer, put out a call, and people began coming down there. And what was interesting to me is a lot of the people who went down there to help out, who answered the Common Ground call, tended to be sort of the non-traditional people.
There was a train that conveniently ran by this eco-village center, and there were people who would jump trains and travel around like that, just homeless folks. And these kids were homeless traveling around, and they jumped off the train and were like kind of checking out this eco-village center. And the guy who started that slowly started getting to know him, talking to him and bringing him in. And after a while, these kids totally got involved. And I was amazed because these guys were pretty much running the center at the point that I got there. And they had just like jumped off the train. And they were like the most knowledgeable permaculturists I'd ever known.
So it's got the little ears, and those ears on the hydrogens have a positive charge, and on the bottom side, it's got a negative charge on the oxygen. It's a polar molecule, right? Water's bipolar. Somebody should pass the hat for its therapy session. It's like bipolar. It's like, I don't know, am I a liquid, am I solid, am I gas? I don't know. It's tripolar. It's like, what am I? Who am I? right? Am I sublimating? Am I evaporating? Am I evapotranspiring? Am I condensing? Like, what's up? I mean, imagine water, right?
A lot of them were people I had known from convergences and political movements for years and years back, who'd learned their skills doing things like feeding people for mobilizations and protests, or setting up street medic clinics for the WTO protests or the IMF World Bank protests. There was the Rainbow Kitchen went down there, who learned their skills feeding people at the rainbow gatherings. And it was like all the weird hippies and anarchists, kind of went down to common ground and found themselves in the middle of the deep South, dishing out food, some of them to, rednecks who ended up kind of becoming very deeply attached to like the Rainbow Family Kitchen. Because their food was so good, right?
So this is a poster of all the different types of things that they do, and this might start to sound familiar to what's going on here in the BBC. They have like a library, construction, helping in the schools. They have a sewing shop, a little garden, and a bakery. So you can see like there's a huge crossover to what we're trying to do in the United States with eco-villages and city repair and village redesign, and they're just coming up with this on their own. It's the same concepts.
And the game of the day is ecosystem restoration, not ecosystem. Can you restore the ecosystem to step up to the plate and figure out how to get along with each other in a collaborative and collective manner to do the work, to get to the ecosystem? Which I think is, what happens here is one of the great embodiments, literally, of this headwaters restoration is VBC 6.
And contrasting that with the clinic that was set up by the military when they finally got there, which was surrounded by barbed wire and armed guards, and was not exactly a really user-friendly place. And there is a story that one day a couple military police drove up to the Common Ground Relief Clinic and started unloading trucks full of medical supplies that they had liberated from a FEMA warehouse where they were sitting unused. And one of the guys said, "This is great, you guys are doing this, but why are you bringing all this stuff to an anarchist clinic?" And the two military guys looked at him and said, "Well, we thought that this stuff should be used, and we thought this was one place we could bring it where you wouldn't ask any hard questions."